Jessica.
Good morning, everybody. The topic of my speech for today is based on detention centers. The purpose of my speech is to claim that the U.S. immigration detention system is substantially flawed towards immigrant children, which simply means that detention centers where immigrant children are stored in to have significant disadvantages to them, such as providing poor medical treatment, being the cause of traumas, and providing inadequate living measures to them. Going on to reason number one, detention centers provide poor medical treatments to immigrant children. This is a bad problem because of the fact that having bad health on a child leads to life-threatening situations. According to Dr. Scott Allen, a specialist in internal medicine from Riverside, California, states that the result of the facilities not having adequately trained professionals, for example, the shortage of pediatricians, leads to significant illnesses and gives problems to these children. Not having appropriate specialists to care for these children has a major impact on their health, and the only healthcare providers that they have just have the basic knowledge of health and do not have the trained and necessary information to know how to care for a child. An example that Scott Allen provides is an 18-month-old infant who has been presenting at least 8 or 10 times over a 10-period healthcare complaining that the child had diarrhea, and when the mother would ask for assistance, the medical professionals in the facility would not assist her, and when she was sent to the medical hospital, medical records showed that the baby lost a third of his body weight under the care of the clinicians inside the facilities and had diarrhea disease. According to Tara Law, who is a journalist and reporter for Time, gave 2 examples about how children who didn't have the necessary health professional led to their death. And an example is the 8-year-old Guatemalan boy named Felipe Gonzalez Alonso, who was initially diagnosed with a cold. When he was sent to the hospital, he was treated and diagnosed that he had nausea and vomiting and died shortly after. Another example that Tara Law provides is a 7-year-old Guatemalan girl named Jacqueline Call, who was stated that she wasn't feeling well. And when she was sent to the hospital, she was found that she had swelling in her brain and had liver failure. Going on to reason number 2, detention centers are the cause for traumas in immigrant children. Having a trauma can lead to a long-lasting impact on a child's development. That is stated from the doctor Pamela McPherson, who is a child psychologist. She states that the impairment in the developmental milestones, thinking, emotional regulation, and even the ability to form healthy relationships. This trauma causes children to regress and lose their skills, and can also lead for the children to mature too quickly and take on adult behaviors way too early. Dr. Pamela McPherson also states that the effects of trauma are cumulative, placing children in high-stress situations. This traumatic stress can lead to ongoing difficulties for children and can also create damage to the bond that the children has with their parent. According to the Harvard Research Center on the Developing Child, has shown that supportive parents help children to cope with the everyday challenges that contribute to stress. Parents' loving care is crucial to a child's recovery from the psychological impacts of a real or perceived threat. When a child is forced to endure adversity without nurturing, they have excessive cortisol levels, and that becomes toxic to their developing brain circuits. Columbia University psychology professor named Tim Tottenham also states that the adult who's routinely been there provides this enormous stress buffering effect on a child's brain at a time when we haven't yet developed that brain itself. Going on to reason number 3, detention centers provide inadequate living measures for immigrant children. According to the Human Rights Watch Association, almost none of the children who are stored in this facility receive soap, toothbrushes, or toothpaste while in the holding cells. They spent almost 2 days with no toothpaste, and they always wear the clothes that they were originally brought into. Also, the organization states that they were unable to wash their hands with soap or another disinfectant while using the restroom, which exposes us to communicable diseases. Lastly, the situation inside there when they sleep is that the only sheets that they receive are made of Miller, thin blankets similar to foil wrappers, and that causes them to lead to bad health conditions. And lastly, to sum this all up, no child should undergo these situations, such as providing poor medical treatment, experiencing trauma, and being separated by the parents or live inhumanely. These facilities should improve the immigration detention system or should not store these children in these detention centers. Thank you.
Okay, well, the proposition's clearly identified, and there's a good preview at the beginning of the speech so we know where you're headed in the body of the argument. On the first point, the lack of medical attention for the children, you're pretty straightforward in talking about this. You've got several experts who are testifying to some problems that might be had. It sounds to me like there's a lack of pediatricians on site, although this is a little ambiguous because it seems like the argument here is that it's based on a couple of examples that you have, and those examples are certainly good illustrations of problems that could be faced there. How typical that is not quite as clear. There's not really any reference to what kinds of professionals are available in the detention centers, whether there are doctors or not. It's kind of a side comment that gets made in one of the quotes that says that they're just caregivers who are unprepared for these sorts of things. I don't have any reason to believe that there is a lot of medical care that's provided, but it seems dubious to me that they wouldn't have some medical facilities. And in fact, in two of your examples, the kids get sent to a hospital facility, so there is something that's going on there. Now, whether they were sent early enough or whether or not there's enough attention being paid to them, I think that's maybe the argument that is being developed there. But it's an undesirable place for a sick child to be. I think you do a pretty good job explaining what some of those problems would be. On the issue of trauma, a lot of your information is generic information about childhood trauma, not necessarily specific to this particular context. And I would assume, for instance, that the inference that you're making is the causality of the trauma here is being detained. I would imagine that the refutation speaker might say the causality of the trauma is being smuggled. The source of a trauma needs to be identifiable in order to be able to say, well, we're going to diagnose that this is caused by this other thing. And I'm not sure that your evidence identifies that it's just these detention centers. It's kind of generic about what kind of traumas kids might face. The last point is kind of a generic piece of information about the living conditions. And you've got one piece of evidence there that describes conditions about lack of toothbrushes and the Mylar blankets that they get. I think that's a good starting point. I think maybe a little bit more backstop on that, a little bit more substantive information might help, or potentially that could be the first part of the argument I think maybe if you'd made that point number one and then followed up with the other two arguments as your second and third points, it might have built a little bit more, and that would have felt like instead of being its own standalone point, it is part of the process that you're talking about, and might make that argument a little bit more convincing, since you don't have any other evidence except that kind of generic criticism that exists on that point. So I'm kind of just, retconning your speech. I think maybe that would work pretty effectively. There's a lot of reading in the presentation. I know you've got a lot of quotes, but you want to try and talk to us a little bit more so that we know that you are making the argument to us. You're not just reading somebody else's argument on this, that this is your idea that you're explaining to us. All right, thank you.